Awesome. All right, thank you everyone for coming today.
Don't connect to audio. Let's put out.
Perfect. Thank you everyone for coming today, faculty and our student advisory board for COLT. So they're going to be talking about the top 6 strategies that they came up with for enhanced learning and teaching pedagogy. So this student advisory board has convened for the spring semester, and we're going to continue to do this as part of the Committee on Learning and Teaching here at SUNY Oswego. And it's really important for us to have the perspectives of our students to know kind of what they need, what's working, what's not working for them in the classroom as part of what we do here at CELT and also our subcommittee for COLT. So what we're going to do first is just kind of go around and introduce ourselves. We have quite a few people on Zoom as well. So we'll start in the room just so everyone can introduce themselves. If you'd like to say your name and your major if you're a student or your department if you're a faculty. Start with you again. Okay.
Psychology and is that one?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm a psychology and wellness management major.
My name is Irene. I'm a wellness management major and bio minor.
Dave Sargent. I'm from the Human Development Department.
John Kane, economics and CELT.
My name is Aiden Wilson. I'm a finance and marketing major with a minor in health science.
Hi, I'm Allison Aya. I'm one of the tutoring coordinators in the Office of Learning Services.
Carolina Ia, physics and astronomy.
Jessica Harris, assistant professor in health promotion and wellness, and also the chair for COLT.
I'm Maggie Schmull. I'm in criminal justice and I work here with John at the teaching center.
And then online, we'll start with Grace.
Hi, I'm Grace. I'm a strategic communication grad student.
Delaney, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Delaney. I am an adolescent education major with a Spanish major and a minor in athletic coaching.
Elena?
Hi, I'm Elena. I'm a human resource management major.
Stephanie?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Pritchard. I'm also from the Office of Learning Services. I work in the Writing Center.
Kristen?
Hi, I'm Kristen Croyle. I'm a psychologist and the Dean for Liberal Arts and Sciences.
Star?
Hi, I'm Star Madison. I'm an assistant professor in the Career and Technical Educator Prep Department.
Andrea?
Hey, I'm Andrea Vickery. I'm an assistant professor in communication studies.
Joe?
Hi, I'm Joe Graziano. I'm a wellness management major.
Samantha?
Hi, I'm Samantha Quinn. I am an assistant professor in communication studies.
Jay?
Hi, I'm Jay. I'm a TESOL major with a minor in linguistics.
Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah Honish in the math department.
Maggie's already here, and is it Terrian? Terrian?
There we go. Hey everyone, my name is Terrian Garvis. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the interim associate director of the James A. Trandaflow Institute for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Transformative Practices.
Welcome. Thank you everyone for coming. So we're going to get right into it. Elena, would you like to kind of start with the slides? Do you want me to click over on the next one? Do you want to go over the objectives for us, Elena?
Sure. So the objectives of this meeting, so our first is to explore the importance of flexibility and accessibility in education. Our second is to recognize the value of transparency in teaching. The third is to establish clear expectations and accountability for readings. The fourth is to implement effective check-ins with low-stakes assignments. The fifth is utilize formative feedback to support student learning. And the sixth is develop strong relationships with students. And so we'll be going through each one of these, giving you the chance to ask some questions or just to have a discussion in general.
Thank you.
All right, so the first kind of point that we're touching on is flexibility and accessibility within the courses. So as students, we understand that deadlines and class schedules are created for a reason. They provide structure and teach students discipline and time management skills. According to Cambridge English Dictionary, the definition of flexibility is the ability to change or be changed easily according to the situation. So as students, that's exactly what we're asking for. We're asking that professors take into account life and extenuating circumstances and understand that while we may always want to put our education first, that sometimes can be impossible when certain things happen. So when we ask for flexibility, we're asking that professors are willing to work with us when situations do arise. One way we've suggested that this can be done is by providing multimodal access to any lectures or notes. So allowing students to Zoom into class if they have to fly home for a funeral unexpectedly, or watch the recorded lecture afterwards and get the notes. Just providing flexible alternatives that make it so students don't need to sacrifice their education when significant things do come up. Which leads me to my next suggestion. As the board has it's suggested, many students have expressed a need for accessibility within their courses. So the Oswego website says that accessible teaching practices are a proactive way to help improve the learning experience for all students, regardless of their situation. So we're not necessarily asking or suggesting that we have Zoom links to every class so that students can lay in bed and listen to class. That's not at all what this is about. It's just oftentimes students will need that accessible alternative when they fall ill or get injured or experience any other circumstance that will make it difficult to impossible for students to physically go in person to class, but when they still want to take part and get that learning experience. So again, we're not really suggesting that every single course be altered to a high flex modality, but to allow Zoom links instead of coming to class on occasion, or suggesting that professors incorporate multimodal elements into the syllabus and allow for that accessible element to take part if there's any extenuating circumstances or things that come up. Also, my last point about accessibility is we suggest that professors just think about the needs of students. So when it comes to presentations with certain fonts or lighting within classroom, temperature within classrooms, anything that can provide accessibility to students, just be thinking about that and asking students what their accessible needs are for the classroom. So yeah, I've suggested a few strategies, but I can open it up to my fellow students to see if they have any experiences or suggestions they want to share as they pertain to flexibility and accessibility. Or faculty, if you had any questions about what we're looking for.
I was gonna say, I think you touched on everything, especially with the extenuating circumstances. Like, you never know what can happen in real life. So, like, it's just life. So, like, I feel like it's be better if you guys are like a little bit, not you guys specifically, but just like in general, if we're just like a bit more flexible and like understanding, because we can't really do anything about it. It's just life.
I have, is it time for questions or should I like?
Yeah, you can focus, yeah.
Okay, well, so I've been like really thinking about, attendance and kind of, practices that work for students, but also, hold students accountable to being present in class. And so I'm curious, for the students who are joining us today, has there been a class that you have felt like has done this really well? And you want to share with us that, that experience in terms of attendance? Because, there's a fine line between, having, some flexibility in attendance, but also, allowing students to, like Grace, you were saying before, Zoom in while they're, sitting in bed kind of thing. So curious if you've had a class that has done this really well and what that looked like.
I can speak on this on one of my wellness management courses. So we had about 2 to 3 days of like excused absences that you can just not show up to class, and then that counts as like one absence. And then on top of that, she told us like if there are any certain circumstances where like, family issues, medical issues, something like that, to like reach out to her and let her know. And that was really helpful for me because then I could just email her and like kind of explain my situation and go through it. And then that didn't account against me for the class.
Yeah, similar to that, I was a TA for Management 261 within the School of Business, and as a TA, we were kind of responsible for I guess running the day-to-day operations of the class. Something that my professor did really well was allowing students to have that 2 to 3 absence window. All they had to do was fill out a form and just say why they couldn't make it. And then all of the resources were already uploaded in Brightspace. So that kind of gave them that like flexibility if something did happen. Another class that I want to say, another department that I think does really well is the economics department. Especially with like micro and macro, kind of having that ability to go on Zoom, and still be able to participate with the iClicker quizzes. Another one would have been, was it money and banking, where the professor would upload the Panopo, like class recordings afterwards, and then all of the resources were already there, so it made it easier. It was just a matter of like timing for certain resources that like I guess kept us accountable at the end of the day.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to transparency.
Okay, so I'm presenting on transparency, and I was hoping today we could discuss from the bullet points the benefits of transparent communication and settings of course expectations and grading criteria, and learning how transparency builds trust and fosters a positive learning environment. And when I think of transparency, I think of openness and candidness between professors and students, professors being very honest about what is working in their teaching environment, things that they're very expressive and basically tell students, this is working for me, this is not working. So the students understand if they need to make any adjustments in their course schedule or what they're teaching. And then same goes for the students, that the students are able to communicate and say, hey, this isn't working for us. What can be changed? And from personal experience, I have an example in one of my courses. We had a lecture on, this was actually in the chemistry department. It was a very difficult topic, and a lot of students felt that they didn't understand it. And the professor actually communicated that many students emailed her. And so then they made an extra, or they kind of changed their course schedule around and had an extra day where they went over that material that a lot of kids had difficulty with, instead of just saying like, hey, go back to the textbook and like look it up yourselves, because obviously a lot of students don't understand that. So.
Anyone else from the student advisory board want to add to transparency?
I agree, because it just recently happened with an exam. A student emailed the teacher and the professor, and then they were just like, they didn't understand what was going on in the classroom. So he moved the exam like to a later date, and then he actually reviewed in class like what would be on the exam, and that made it a whole bunch easier because it was like 3 different chapters.
Any questions? All right, move to the next.
All right, so next is setting those clear expectations. So I've been in courses where we were required to read like, let's say 50 to 60 pages each class, and we aren't given much like space in between. And then on top of that, we have other classes that are assigned like the same amount. And I would admit that I think after COVID, a lot of students, our attention span is like drastically decreased. So like for me to read like a certain amount of pages, it takes me like X amount of hours. And for some students that is difficult, it's time consuming, especially students that like work and are part of like those athletic teams. So we kind of decided like set those clear expectations of what we need to read to discuss in class and to like know for the assignments. That way like we don't spend, X amount of hours reading stuff that like we don't really need to know. Within the course, yes, it does like make the reading a little bit, I guess, easier, but in class we do discuss it anyway. So kind of just setting that expectation from the beginning of each module of what points in the book you really need to hit on. That way in class we could discuss it and how know what to expect from an assignment coming up. However, you do have to keep us accountable for the readings. That's why I mentioned kind of checking in with students weekly, or like having those iClicker quizzes. That way like you make sure that you read before, that way when you come to class you know what to expect, how to participate. So yeah, just keeping us accountable for our readings, but still being understanding that reading a lot of pages every week and having multiple courses with the same expectations, it is time consuming.
Anyone from the board want to add to that?
I'll add something. So I like I'm a huge fan of accountability for readings, and this kind of just I had experienced like reading summaries of sort, but this also could simply be sending out questions that you will be discussing on the readings to students beforehand. So that way, if you're assigning a 30-page reading, a 30-page chapter or whatever for students, they have a narrowed focus of how to read, if that makes sense. So they know what to look for and what will be discussion points, rather than just reading 10 pages, skimming 10 pages, and then not being prepared for class discussions and not retaining anything. But rather, the professor makes sure to point out salient things within the readings that students should be looking for and looking to discuss in class. Something like that, just holding students accountable, but also guiding students in their readings.
Thank you, Grace.
I think something else you could do also, like instead of if you like the summaries, but you're like, I don't have the time to read and really grade a summary of what I've assigned, if you just have them do like takeaway points, that way you're like, oh yeah, that was in the chapter. I know that those 3 things were there. And that way you can just kind of grade as like, I know that you did it.
Thank you, Elena. Next, we have check-ins.
Okay, hi. So I've had multiple classes, mostly my psych classes, that have had check-ins with us where we do little iClicker questions, or as of right now in biopsych, she asks us questions, like she makes them up, and then we just review like exactly what we just spoke about, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page about things. And I think that's really helpful because sometimes you think you know the information and you're listening to the professor and you're like, yes, that makes sense. But then when you go on your own and you're trying to like understand it, it's not clicking for you. And it's just like, oh wait, I thought I understood it. So like just nipping it in the butt right there is easier than having students be on their own. And also I think it's beneficial for professors because you get to see like instant feedback of who's not really who's paying attention, but who's understanding the material and who's not. And then you get to see like, oh, do I need to revisit this topic? Do I need to go over or provide them with a different example? And students also get that too. So they gotta be like, okay, maybe this is something that I need to look at on my own or ask a question after class, because not everyone likes to speak during class. So like it's helpful there too.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add anything?
I was just gonna say that I think that check-ins are a great way. I think ungraded check-ins are ideal because I think that check-ins are a way to, especially if it's a quiz, like a pop quiz type thing, it's definitely a way for students to understand what they are learning versus what they need to improve on, especially when there's 2 exams in a whole semester, the midterm and the final. That within those 7 weeks, what do they need to look at and focus on for the upcoming exam? Or what does the professor need to focus on going forward that students didn't retain? But I don't necessarily think these are supposed to be like graded quizzes, like, oh, you don't know the material type thing, but like a learning experience for students.
Great.
Sorry. To piggyback off of that, I definitely agree that it shouldn't be like high stakes or like anything that's gonna drop their grades, because we are learning it in the moment. So sometimes it takes time to like review your notes, maybe read some additional resources, articles, whatever, about it, just to make sure that you get the concept or the idea itself. So like it shouldn't be high stakes, but like I think it depends on the question as well. If it's something that like a professor just spoke about, there's like an issue there. Like, were you paying attention, or like what happened? Because for one of my classes, she would teach us the lecture, have the slides up, and then she'd ask us a question exactly based on exactly what she just talked about. Or like she'll specifically say something and mention it in class, and then she'll give a question on it that's related to the material. So it's just like, oh, you were just having to be like paying attention to what she was saying to understand it, but it shouldn't be like a quiz, like where it's gonna.
Yeah, I just want to also say something off of that. I had a class that did iClicker quizzes really well. They actually just graded your participation in the quizzes instead of like your actual, if you answered the questions right or wrong, because it's like a whole learning experience, like going through it and whether like you know the information or not. And they're just like, oh, if you participate in this, then you get the credit. And then you can see where you are at with your knowledge and yeah, test it later. And then quiz is a test.
Wait, sorry. This also has to do with attendance, because in that same class, she like had us log on And then like you can check what time people logged on for iClicker, and then you can see who was in class and who wasn't in class, or like when they got to class. So then you can see like, oh, this person was here at like 9:35. So you know that they were here and they were present and they were actually participating instead of being in bed randomly clicking something. Yeah.
Formative feedback.
Okay, so I had formative feedback, which I think also goes hand in hand with check-ins. Our bullet points were to explore the role of formative feedback in promoting student growth and understanding, and to learn how to provide timely, specific, and constructive feedback to students. I believe this goes hand in hand with the student and the professor. Both of us are in an academic setting where learning is a continuous process, not only for the student, but for the professor as well. We want to show insights about the strengths and areas for improvement. We want to refine our skills to the best of our ability. This is also a way to show reflection and self-assessment to take away what you need to work on personally and what you think you are doing great and excelling in. I believe this should not only be for assignments and projects, it should be throughout the semester and just about like how we are doing as a class and what we need to work on, not just a grade, not just a number grade, because that doesn't assess the totality of the student's academic performance. That might just be for a specific assignment. And I believe that it's important to make sure that everyone's on the same page and to understand what as a professor you can do better and as a student you can do better.
Thank you, Delaney. Anyone want to add anything to that from the board?
I think, okay, this is gonna be biased because it's you that's doing it. But do you know how you have the checklist and you can see like which areas that like you did well in? Like checklists are very, very important because you get to see where you need to work on and where you're like okay at. So like those are good, but also comments also help because it's like, okay, I see this, but like what does that mean? And like, can you like tell it to me?
Yeah, I think in a lot of our discussions that we had as the student advisory board, a lot of the comments were there's been some times where you've received a paperback without any feedback and you don't know where to go from there. Does anyone want to speak about that? Aiden?
I could. So yeah, there was a class one time that I took it whereas we submitted the final paper and I just got back on it. Oh, good job. But then I get like an 80 on it and it's like, what did I need to change in order to get that, that 100? I also like how classes I'm taking a class currently where I was like I would submit work and my professor just said, oh yeah, this is perfect. And then I get like a 90 on it. So it's like, what more did you expect me to do in order to get that top mark?
Yeah.
So yeah, you may think that we don't look at it, but in actuality we do look at it because we do value our grades.
Building relationships with students.
So building relationships with students, building that rapport and that trust can really increase engagement and like more meaningful discussions. I know a lot of professors try to work in discussions during courses, and I find myself personally more willing to participate in my classes where the professor has taken the time to kind of create like that safe environment, like everyone's thoughts are like valued here. I'm not going to laugh at you, I'm not going to put you down for whatever you say. Some of the way that my professors do this is just like saying hi when we come into the room or having a discussion with like one of us before the class starts and being like, how's your day going? What are your plans for the weekend? Just kind of putting that effort into getting to know us one-on-one when there is like a little bit of lull. I find that very meaningful. And then through the like showing care through availability and encouraging language, that's like professors saying like, hey, I'm here for you and I actually care about this and I'm going to listen to you and I'm available for you. I'm here for you to succeed. Just kind of like genuinely saying that to people. Because I get professors that are like, if you need me, I'm in my office hours. But they just say it so like, they don't really put the emphasis on that they care that they're there. And I think that made sense. If that didn't, you can ask a question.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. Does anyone else want to piggyback off of that with their thoughts on?
I do definitely love. Oops.
Yeah, go ahead, Delaney. Yeah.
Sorry. I have had great experience in the education department. I have built relationships with all of my professors. I do believe as like a future educator, and because that's like their main concentration, they understand what it's like to be a student as well. But I think like the understanding part and aspect of it, just we all are students, like this time in our life is very stressful. And when we have professors that show that they care and then they're willing to help us, it really like motivates us to want to do better for them and to work our hardest to do exactly like what we need to do to be successful in that classroom. But I think it really like matters about how the professor shows that they care, because otherwise like we aren't going to care as much because we don't feel like the need to be successful for them, if that makes any sense.
I definitely agree because there are certain teachers that create an environment that's so welcoming that just makes you want to go to class even when you don't feel like going to class. Like I have a 3 o'clock class. After the day, I'm kind of done, but he's just awesome. So I just want to go to the class, even though I'm just like tired and I want to sleep. But like just being in the room is just so fun and like you're learning something new. So it makes it even better. And also, I think when you build a relationship with professors, it's easier to talk to them, to like bring up little issues that you're having, because sometimes people don't like to talk to their professors. It's like, oh, they're mean, they're this, when in reality they're not. You just haven't spoken to them and like kind of gotten to know them. But also it's a two-way street. So it's like, what is a professor doing that makes you think that they're mean or makes you think that they're unapproachable? So it's like how you do it. I agree with the small talk part. Like I've had professors that have small talk with us. I feel like they're better. I feel like I could, not better. Whoa, take that back. I feel like they're more approachable because they're making the effort to see you and just be like, hey, how's your weekend? Hey, how are you doing? How's today? You know, just checking in on you too.
And
Yeah, a part of like building that relationship with students, I think another way to like get more involved with students is potentially going to their club meetings. So I am the president-elect for our Students Association. And I kind of have been pushing ways for our academic clubs to become more involved. And a way for that to happen is with our professors kind of becoming involved. So like potentially offering like a few extra points for an assignment if they show up to a club's meeting. That way you have more student engagement outside of the classroom, because classrooms is a very theoretical place. However, when you can apply it to like the real world, and clubs are a great way to get that experience. I think it makes a better overall experience for students that go to Oswego.
what are some ways, I think we had talked about as a class too, or as a advisory board, that professors can do that in the classroom? You said offering points, but also maybe assignments related, you had talked about at one point, or embedding it in the curriculum.
Yeah, so like potentially just offering like a few extra credit points, or saying if you go to like X amount of meetings, you would get this amount of points. Saying that if you go to this meeting, you write a paper on it. Or making it a requirement in a course that you go to at least one meeting and talk about what the club discussed. That way like the clubs do benefit out of it, because they get more attention from students, and that way they could run longer. And then also like students, they kind of get to learn more about the field that they want to go into, and know, if especially their first year student, like know if this is actually the field that they want to go into.
All right, and thank you for being here. So we want to open it up for discussion with both faculty, students, and any questions regarding their top 6 strategies. I'll just start with the students. Is there anything that, when we came to the discussion of the top 6 strategies, one that really kind of was the top one for all of you, because of any personal experiences where you felt like professors needed to grow in this area on our campus, or what are your thoughts there? Gabby?
I feel like the accessibility and flexibility one really stood out because I had a situation last year and some professors weren't willing to accommodate, and it made it like 10 times harder than it was supposed to be. And I feel like some professors don't want to go on Zoom. Like they just don't like it. And I understand it. Like you want students in the classroom, but some people genuinely cannot make it. So it's just better to have that flexible option available for them so that they can have something to go. Because at the end of the day, I do want to learn. I come here to learn. I'm paying all this money so I can learn. So I want I don't want to just miss out on class because you're not willing to accommodate or you just don't like the way that something is set up.
Delaney?
Very personal to me this semester. I had a loved one pass away, like right after midterms, and the flexibility aspect was like the most important to me because school is so important, and I was so worried that I would fall back, and like there was just so much on my mind that wasn't school, at that point in my life, and almost all my professors were very understanding. They helped me. They asked what they needed from them, what I needed from them. And I think that if I didn't have those types of professors, I would be behind. And I also would like not have the same motivation to get back into school after such a difficult part of my life. Um, I'm very grateful for that. And I think that their flexibility really helps me. And I can't really imagine what it would be like if they weren't as flexible and they didn't um, extend deadlines for me and they didn't just ask how I was every time they saw me.
Anyone else want to add anything?
I'd like to add something related to communication between students and faculty. I think it's very important when a student has a problem to actually tell something to the faculty. If they cannot come to class, sometimes we see just the empty seat, but not every faculty member has the time or willingness or even just they notice to send an email to that student. I do, but I do in classes with less than 30 students. If I would have 150 students, I wouldn't be able to do that because just don't notice everybody just at once. So it's important the students to tell us, look, I have this thing going on, or come to class and talk to the faculty. So indeed, it is a two-way street, and yeah, so I think this is important. And also, perhaps not to be, discouraged by faculty who are a little bit more intimidating. So, depending on the field, not everybody has great social skills. I'm talking about physics, it's not known for this. But this applies to other fields, and it's just different from person to person. So I think the students should know this and should, feel free to communicate and tell us their needs. I think that's important. Yeah.
Any other faculty, staff want to add anything? Any questions for the students? Do the students have any questions for the faculty? No. Question.
How often does the student board meet?
We've been meeting monthly since we started, and we met actually twice in 1 month recently to get ready for this presentation. So we've really, in the past couple of meetings, talked about what the students want to do in regards to learning and teaching on campus. So the presentation was one that came about based on conversations of things that were working well on our campus, things they felt like needed some growth areas, which is why this presentation came to be. But we also were discussing some future initiatives that students could help and take part in on campus. So that's something we're working towards now. But I think COLT, for many years since I've been a part of it, was looking for the student voices, because we need those to be able to, make changes, make improvements in the goal of what COLT is and what CELT is in regards to learning and teaching and pedagogy on our campus.
I have one question. How intimidated do you think people are? I mean, oftentimes, I feel very fortunate when somebody will just say, "Hey, can't you do this?" Like just not really worrying about protocol and etiquette and all that stuff. Just blurts things out, and then I try to encourage that as much as I can. But I think there's kind of an inherent intimidation. So do you feel that a lot, or is it?
Well, I don't like to shout answers in general, but maybe it's like a fear of being wrong. Cause like you have an idea of what the answer is, but you don't know for sure what the answer is. And some students are, they're not nice. So like you don't want to get laughed at, so you don't say something, or you just don't want to participate.
The fear of speaking up.
Yeah.
I think the students too can fear that professors can have a negative response to whatever feedback they give them. So yeah, like that innate, like kind of when you're like speaking out in the classroom, it's like, oh, are they going to perceive this or receive this well? Or like, is like, yeah.
Kind of going off of that as well for the students, is there an intimidation going to a professor's office or for their office hours or student hours? Is there ways that you think faculty on campus can make those times that they have more inviting for students?
I think it's definitely connecting with students like in the classroom. I don't know, maybe like pulling students aside. Let's say that they did poorly on an assignment, like pulling them aside and saying, "Hey, did you understand this assignment well?" And maybe if they say no, then you could be like, "Okay, just to come to my office hours, maybe so that I could explain it better to you." And if they like suggest, if they would like to have that, if they're open to that, that's a way to like kind of bridge that the divide between faculty and students.
I have a suggestion for this. Sometimes I notice that students like to come to buy two. So encourage students to go together, or you guys ask each other, let's go to office hours together. We might have the same questions. So I think this makes it a little bit more easier for students. And of course, sometimes offering office hours, kind of unofficial coffee hours at the coffee shop here. So the students are. Yeah.
I have a question. This is to this to students, and so faculty and staff that teach these courses. What better can we do to prepare you all for the job market? So I know we talked about the knowledge that you all obtain, but in many cases, the statistics now showing that many of our students are not, or having a hard time once they graduate finding a job, because many of the places want you all to have experience. So what can faculty and again staff that teach these courses do to prep you for the job market, both the knowledge and the skills base? What can we do?
So I think that one of the big things you can do is kind of like implement like interactive things. So I'm in a senior capstone right now, and we are consulting for real life groups. And I think that's like really helpful. It's a huge thing I can add onto my resume. So like having those in-class projects, I think one of the things maybe is talking to students about, hey, you can use this class project on your resume. You can use a group project on your resume. It shows that you have teamwork skills. It shows your communication. I think the biggest thing that students struggle with is communicating the skills and abilities that they do have. So maybe have a conversation with them about that. The one thing to kind of be wary of is if you have a bigger class, or if you have students and you're like, I don't think these students are going to be that motivated to work with like real life companies. So for example, my senior capstone class, we're doing it with real companies, but maybe for a 200 level course, that might not work as well because students aren't going to be as caring, and you don't want to like ruin a relationship with a company just because there are a few students who did not care or did not commit themselves enough to the actual project that was going on.
To Aiden and then Grace next.
Yeah, I think Alina brought up a great point with like integrating projects. As I said before, I was a TA, and my professor, he would give countless stories of how students would do the group project in his class. They would go for like a job interview, like showing them how they kind of saw, and they would integrate a project that they did. The employers would see the project, and there have been offers made to students based on the projects that they did in school. So I think projects is one way. Another way is again like trying to integrate those clubs. So like clubs like the investment club, where they got like that hands-on experience. The media arts, so WTOP, WNYO, the Oswegonian, where you're like we're doing stuff practically outside of the classroom, kind of enhances that learning outside of the classroom. That really learning by doing. Another way is when you invite employers or like past alumni who would have taken the course and you bring them in. and kind of speaking about their experience in the field and how the course helped them, is also a way that I think students could be better prepared for the job market. Oh, and also depending on the class, I also ask the students for like their career aspirations and having them do projects based on that. Could also be a way to, really know if a student really wants to go into the field that they want to, and kind of, it'll be a guiding light for them.
Grace and then Delaney.
Yeah, I agree with the project type things. I think that professional development initiatives is a huge thing. I know that I just graduated and I feel like I was kind of on my own for my resume, for my e-portfolio. I kind of just feel like I was just floating. So I feel like any sort of encouraging either clubs or resources on campus to use to promote those materials to students and say like, hey, like you really are going to need a solid resume, you really are going to need an e-portfolio, etc. Here's how we can help you. Here's the resources available. Here's how you can use them to get a job post-grad. And then also kind of going off of that, encouraging like internships or other experiences within the field, because I know that for a lot of students, they go home for the summer, they work their waitress jobs, whatever. But nowadays, it's the post-grad environment, even entry-level jobs, you need 2 to 3 years of experience in the field. And it's like, how is that an entry-level job? But that's required. So for students, really encouraging that if they want to do this, they have to get involved in this field and even do an internship over the summer or during implementing it into their coursework so that they can have those professional experiences that will benefit them when they do graduate. Or even just if those internships are available, it's a huge thing if the professor reaches out individually to a student and says, hey, I saw this opportunity and I think you're a great fit. Even that could change a student's experience completely, because then they'd feel encouraged to actually apply or actually go through with it.
Delaney, then Elena.
So as a teaching major, we have placements, which are pretty much like our internships, and the school is like providing it for you. But I know my other friends who have to have internships to graduate struggle trying to find them. So I think professors helping them access them, or, just being able to tell them like these are some good internships you should think about, helping them, like encouraging them to complete them over the summer so they don't have to do it as much during the school year. Also, I think that active learning in the classroom is really important. In almost all of my classes, we do like a role play, and I have to act as a teacher to my peers. And I think that gets me out my comfort zone, and it makes me feel more comfortable so that when I'm in the regular classroom, like I can pull those skills out. Also just like being realistic. I think that of course there's a lot of different content that all the professors have to get through throughout the semester, but just like including those little life lessons, like those mean a lot. And I think it shows you as a student, like what is going to really matter when you get there, into a real job and into the work field.
Thank you. Elena.
I actually have a professor that does professional development assignments. So we have like our individual assignments pretty much almost every week. And then we have professional development that are due like every few weeks. So the first one was creating a LinkedIn profile. The next one was LinkedIn learning for 2 hours and showing your certification, putting that badge on your LinkedIn profile. Then it was utilizing the Ask program and sending a thank you letter as kind of like proof that you went. And the last one was meeting with a like person on campus. That could have been like Maureen Melville, going to career services to meet with a career coach or Excel or a career peer intern, or just like anything kind of along those lines. Just anyone that you trying to get the most out of the services on campus. A lot of students aren't paying attention in their introductory courses to the Oswego, so they aren't really retaining that information, and that's something that just can kind of like help them be like, hey, you do have these resources and here's like an incentive for you to use them.
Thank you.
Elena, can I ask what class that's for?
That is for organizational behavior, which is HRM 385, taught by
Thanks.
Kristen Sodek.
She's great.
Yeah, I was gonna add to that. I took that class too, and I really liked that she did that in the curriculum. And I actually had the Ask program pulled up because a lot of people don't know about it. And it's a program called Alumni Share Knowledge, and it's brought by SUNY Oswego, and it's basically where students fill out like a Google form saying what their major is, what they're interested in, and like their experience and stuff. And then they'll connect you to alumni who have from Oswego, who like are like in the same field as you or what you're interested in. And basically you can meet up with these people and you can do like Zoom calls, you can meet in person if they're like around your area, and basically talk about like professional development and stuff. And I've used this program actually several times with different professions, things that I was interested in. So it's great. And I think even if professors were to like add it on their syllabus, if they don't have time to teach it, just saying, hey, look, you have access to this. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Any last minute questions or discussions from the Student Advisory Board? We hope to do more things in the future, so you can hear more of the student voices to kind of help, you know, in our teaching, our pedagogy, learning. It's really great to hear their insight and apply new things in the classroom. And just ultimately hear their perspectives, you know, about things that are going on campus. So thank you so much for coming, everyone, and encourage your faculty to watch the recording as well. But you'll definitely see more coming from the Student Advisory Board.
We'll have that posted later today. So, and thank you. This was really great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.